Major Music.
Now this week I wanted to talk a little bit about my sampling workflow, because I get a lot of questions sometimes on the channel. Real quick before we get into the actual content of this video, if you like music production videos along these lines, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, let me know you were here. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at d._majormusic. Let me know you're from the channel. Very close to 1,000. I don't know if we'll hit 1,000 by the time I actually upload this video, but if we do, I want to thank everybody that's a part of this community, everybody that's following me on Instagram. Kind of started, so weird thing is, I've been around since 2008 on YouTube, but it really wasn't up until last year I started kind of putting out regular videos each week. It kind of picked up fast, so thank you for getting me up to this point. If you've been a supporter of this channel, whether you're new, whether you've been there since day one, I thank you for being a part of what I'm doing over here. Now, to get into the content of the video itself, now as far as sampling, I sample on quite a few different devices, programs, apps, whatever you want to call it. Now, personally speaking, I would say my main DAW, well, I probably got two main DAWs. One of those being Machine and the other being Beatmaker 3. But the weird part is I don't actually, like, I sample in those, but I wouldn't necessarily say they're my favorite ways to sample. And let me tell you why. Machine used to be one of my favorite programs when it came to sampling. Now, I use the Machine Micro, and there's a couple of other different models of the Machine. The MK3, you got the Machine Studio, you got the Machine Plus, and I'm gonna have the Machine Micro MK3 model. So one of the things and one of the reasons that what I'm about to say, so one of the kinds of sampling in Machine, especially with the Micro specifically, is something that they took away, which I liked, that is also going to be a part of MPC 1, and that's going to also be a part of another app that I like to use to sample with, which is the segment apps on iOS or iPad. It's also on iPhone as well. And what that feature is that they took away from Machine Micro is going to be the real-time chopping. Now, I do know it's in the other models of Machine, but for some reason specifically, they took it away in the Micro. And it was actually in the past versions of the Machine Micro as well. So I don't really understand why they took it away. But Native Instruments, if you're watching this video, please, you got to bring back that real-time sample chopping using Machine Micro. We're going to look at some ways you can get your samples onto your MPC 1. And then we're also going to briefly look at the Segments app, which is another one of my favorite ways to sample. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that you're going to need if you're sampling on MPC or pretty much most hardware samplers. On this table, I have a couple of things. So we're going to look here at this cable first. So if you're going to be sampling to an MPC 1 or any of the MPC models for that matter, now this, you could use it in a variety of different ways. You may actually come out of your MPC like this, going into a source, which could be like your iPhone, your iPad, could be a record player. So that's going to be your audio source. Or I actually may use these as well, coming out of like my synthesizer into the MPC. I may also use these, let's just say for example, I'm sampling to Machine, or I'm sampling to Logic Pro, or maybe I might be sampling to a app on the iPad. Then I'm actually going to still use this for my source, but you know, being that I'm not using the MPC, I'm actually on my iPad, I'm gonna plug these into the audio interface. Next, we have on the table an SD card. Now this SD card is going to be used for my MPC 1. That is where you're going to store most of your sounds and most of your expansions Same thing right here with this flash drive. This 64 gigs, and then I have a 128 flash drive that I use for my storage for my MPC one. Now some of the other models are going to have more storage, but the MPC one specifically is going to have 4 gigs of internal memory. Reason I also have these, I talked about the samples that I store. I buy a lot of sample packs online. However, I do have a membership to like Splice. I did also have a membership at one time to sounds.com. Now they're both pretty good in terms of comparison. I will say though, like for the type of music that I produce, I like a lot more of the sample selection on Splice than I do on the sounds.com platform. Sounds.com to me had a lot more sounds geared towards like 808 style producers, which I use 808s now, but I like a lot of the Soul Surplus content. Shout out to Soul Surplus. I found only so many types of sounds like that on sounds.com, and after a while, I don't know if it's like that currently, but after a while it was really hard to find new content. I feel like on Splice there's a little bit more sounds, kind of like with that whole Soul Surplus type vibe, which I hear a lot of other producers talk about as well. But again, I mean, it's your preference, whatever type of music you enjoy making. I would say definitely try out a free trial of both. I think I want to say Splice has like a 7-day trial, and I think that Sounds might be like 2 weeks. I'm not sure. It's been so long since I did it, but I recommend checking it out either way. Now, also pictured here on this table is one of these adapters here. Now, if you have an iPhone, you're going to need one of these, especially if you're using this wide cable, because this attaches like so, and you get your iPhone and you just plug it up right at the bottom, and then you're ready to go as far as sampling on your computer or your iPad. So again, I just wanted to show these are some things that you might need if you have an MPC one, or if you want to sample into your computer via your audio interface. All right, real quick, just wanted to show you how to sample into your MPC one. Now, if you saw any of my previous videos about like recording your external synthesizer into your MPC one, it's actually kind of very similar. Same way, except the only difference is instead of connecting your synthesizer, you're going to connect either your phone, your iPad. If you're recording maybe even from a record player, will be going into the MPC. Now, it also kind of depends on what kind of inputs you have, but pretty much if you have something like the wide cable that I showed earlier, you're going to go from your source, which in this case would be the iPhone, and you're going to go from the source into the MPC. Now, once you go into the MPC, you're going to want to hit this sampler button right here, because hitting this sampler button toggles in between your main screen and your sample screen right here. You might notice that little meter moving up and down right here, but you can't hear anything right now. That's because I don't have the input turned on. If you didn't see the last time I pointed it out because the camera was kind of blurry, this is actually the input section right here. So if you just tap it like that, notice it says off, now it says on. So then once you have it turned on, you can go ahead here and hit arm, and then I'm going to press play. Actually, I need to drop this down. Thresholds too low. That's also another thing. You want to make sure that this little threshold slider is turned down. That way, whenever it senses the signal, it's going to start. So now watch. Once you record your sample into your MPC, then this little menu is going to come up. So with this menu, you can go ahead, tap in here, And we're just gonna call this one demo, since we're just doing a video real quick. Alright, so then we can choose if we want to save it, and that'll just save the sample. If you want to play it to hear it over, if you want to discard it, or if you want to keep it. So we're going to keep it here, and from there you're going to want to hit sample edit, and from this screen you could actually edit your sample. I'm not going to go through everything on this section, but if you want to trim your entire sample, you're going to just hit trim. Whenever you trim, you could actually either move the endpoints accordingly. Now you can tap your Q link to go from the start of the sample, or tap it again and you notice the light goes to the second. Now you probably won't be able to see, but I can adjust the end of my sample. There you see the slider here. Maybe I want to take this sample and chop it up to where I can play it on these 16 pads. I'm going to go back right here where it says trim, and notice now it says chop. So now if I wanted to chop, I can just go through. Alright, and from there, if you just want to take your slices, you can hit shift, and you want to tap this convert right here, and you're going to have a couple of different options you can scroll through. We want to create a new drum program using slices, and just hit do it. Now if we go back to our main page, you want to highlight this section right here, and then you want to use your data wheel to switch over. That's kind of some off chops, but you get my picture. I just kind of wanted to do something to demonstrate for this video so you could see how to sample chop on the MPC. That was how you'd sample inside the MPC by using an external source. Now let's just suppose, now what we were sampling from earlier was actually Splice. I was just using my phone as an audio source with some samples that I wouldn't get, muted on YouTube for or anything like that. Let's just say if I had these samples on a SD card, or if I had it on a flash drive, then in that case all I would then do is hit browse. Then you're gonna see up here you got places, you got content, you got expansions. So I want to go to places, and in this case I have my internal memory, I have the USB drive. I'm also going to have the SD card that I have inside, so I can go through any one of these depending on wherever my sample is. So then if I go down here, once we find our folder that we want to get our sample from, just gonna press down on your data wheel, and you could access your samples this way. And let's just say, for example, we want to get this chord Nomad, and then I'm gonna just hit load right here. So very simple to load a sample from any external storage that you have inside of your MPC. That's gonna not just be for MPC 1, if you have MPC Live as well. And I'll even take it a step further. So then let's just say I wanted to take that sample here, and maybe I wanted to chop it up just like I did the sample that I had earlier. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna press down on my data wheel, and just like earlier, we want to go and hit sample edit, and then you see your sample come up here, and you can go ahead and start chopping accordingly. Alright, so what I have up here is the Segments app. Now I'm not gonna really go and do a full-blown video on the Segments app, because I actually did another video on this, kind of explaining how to sample in here and how to use segments, just some basic things. I'll also leave that in the bio as well, but I did want to talk about it for just a brief moment. It reminds me of a very similar workflow to what we saw in the iPad as far as what I like in terms about the real-time sample chopping. And I mean, it's real easy to bring in your samples. I'll just hit this folder right here, and then I'll go into like Splice. So if I wanted to bring a sample into segments, I'm gonna just go here into this folder, and then I'm gonna go here to where it says Splice, and then you got your sample folder here, and you could actually see, look, these are all the different like Splice sample packs or Splice samples that I have. So if I wanted to go to a certain let's say I wanted this one and maybe this, let's see, and then if I wanted to go through and chop a sample, so reminds me of the MPC style workflow. And then I mean, from there, if I just want to save it, I can hit this little disc looking icon right here, and I can hit this plus button and name this sample whatever I want it to name it. And I mean, you got your other controls on here. Pitch, if you want to pan, you got pitch on here. Gain, you can move these around as well if you want to adjust your sample. Now the only thing is, with segments, you got to kind of watch it sometimes because it does function as a standalone app, and if you chop up a sample in that standalone version, whenever you open it up inside a digital audio workstation, whenever you open up inside of a DAW, you can't adjust your sample at that point. So what I usually like to do is pull up segments inside of whatever I'm using, Beatmaker 3, Cubase, GarageBand, whatever that is, and then I like to chop it, and if I want to keep it, save it. But this is my favorite sampler on the iPad, and other than that, I also like sampling on the MPC one, as I said earlier. So yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I didn't want to make this a long drawn out video, but I just wanted to talk about my overall sample workflow whenever I'm making sample based beats. Alright, so that's gonna pretty much be my MPC one sampling workflow. As far as just, I wanted to show the two ways that you can load samples on your MPC, and this won't be exclusive just to MPC 1. If you have like MPC Live or Live 2, you'll be able to sample into it same way. You may just have subtle differences here depending on whatever model that you have. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you found this video useful, please go ahead, subscribe to my channel. Also follow me on Instagram at d._majormusic, and then check out the podcast. New uploads lately, we've been going on Thursdays because I've been having some other things going on Fridays that I've been working on, but usually we have new episodes probably Thursday or Friday on most weeks. And had some great interviews. Shout out to like Elbow Media Studios, shout out to Super Mario, shout out to, I got Cool Nerd coming on the show very soon as well. If y'all don't know, check out the episodes here in the channel. And until next time, I'm out.
fake news, scroll down on your phone. Who know the truth, gotta search on your own. The revolution won't be televised. Can't trust the media, they're telling lies. Hackers, fake news, scroll down on your phone. Who know the truth, gotta search on your